Have you ever heard the term corpus callosum? The corpus callosum is a bridge between the left and right hemispheres of the brain. It functions as a communication line for your mind, necessary for your body's equilibrium. If this bundle of neurons were removed, just imagine the havoc wreaked upon your memory, your thoughts, and your perception. Well, this procedure called corpus callosotomy is actually used to treat epilepsy by restricting the spread of epileptic activity to one half of the brain. In the late 1950s, Roger Sperry performed experiments on split brain patients and discovered that the two hemispheres of our brain could not communicate after severing the corpus callosum. When presenting a post-split subject with words to one of the eyes, they reported only seeing the words shown to the right eye. This is because while the left brain controls movement and sight for the right side and vice versa, our left side is the only hemisphere that can process language. For a more detailed explanation, do check out CGP Gray's video on the experiment. With this as context, can there be two conscious beings inhabiting one body? Who are you between the two sides? Through philosophy, let us ask ourselves, how do we define the self?
Firstly, how can we differentiate ourselves from inanimate objects? Well, that's easy enough. We are made of organic materials called cells, while they are simply not. Does this mean one's existence is simply being a pile of flesh and bones? Well, in its simplest form, physical objects are a combination of matter and form. Matter takes up space, and form gives the matter a purpose. This is Aristotle's definition of existence. Hylomorphism, derived from the words hyl, meaning matter, and morphe, meaning form. Building off of Socrates, yourself is your soul, and your soul is the form that allows you to exist.
Socrates preached the importance of humility in philosophical discourse as entering a conversation believing that one does not know the correct answer allows for out of the box thinking and eschews the pressure of persuading someone that your view is more valid. He described the self as an existential experience, that we were not our bodies nor our possessions, but rather we were identifiable through our souls. If it helps, think of his perspective similar to the souls described in Greek mythology.
But wait a minute, animals have souls too, right? They are also able to form thoughts and react to stimuli just as humans do. So, what exactly draws the line between animal and human? This is where Aristotle expounds on mesotes, or living life in moderation. Aristotle then explains in Ethics that there are mindless responses and meaningful reactions, and the ability to decipher between them separates man from the acratic or beasts. In gaming terms, it's comparable to hitting a perfect shot onto an enemy player with blind instincts compared to carefully tracking their movements and taking a calculated shot. We'd show you an example of this, but we're not that good, so you have this instead.
Oh my god! Oh my.
Should intelligence be the only way to identify ourselves, though? There have been experiments showing that some animals, such as dolphins, crows, and monkeys, can display human levels of intelligence using puzzles and memory games. There are even pets that can communicate with their owners using noise, cues, or even buttons.
Good girl. No, Skaya! I have to keep giving her treats.
What do you think this one says?
I don't think that's what Aristotle meant. Meaningful responses are more like our understanding of morality and universal laws, rather than just solving the daily wordle. Our existence extends beyond knowledge. It is also our authentic nature that defines the self. Discussion of the authenticity of a man was brought up by Jean Jacques Rousseau in the 17th century. He believed that the self was living with your true side, and not doing so meant that one was inauthentic, comparing two ways to live. However, this brings up an interesting paradox. In order for one to discover personal authenticity, they would have to explore and immerse themselves in the outside world as an act of self realization. Yet, being influenced by external factors is perceived as inauthentic to the self. This is making no sense.
Hey, so you guys are going philosophical here and you didn't invite me? Let me add something to the file. Dualism. So y'all talk about the self being the soul and it's connected to the body, right? Well, my boy Rene Descartes has some Descartes of his own. Basically, he started to doubt everything. If he can realize that sometimes his experiences are nothing but dreams, how can he be sure that all the other experiences that he has had were not dreams too? Because of that, he can't trust the body. but he can't trust his mind. Him doubting means that he is thinking. Him thinking means that he is a thinking being. This resulted in the famous saying, I think, therefore I am. Dualism described the self as a mind outside of the body, and the physical body being controlled by that mind.
So you're saying that the self is actually like a soul? It's like what we talked about a few minutes ago.
Well, here's the thing. In this theory, the mind outside the body isn't confined to the form of the body. It's like a puppeteer controlling the strings. Descartes believed that since the body is associated with passions and feelings, it's important for the mind to take control so that it will be able to behave rationally and rise above the needs of the body.
Didn't he say that the mind can connect to the brain using the pineal gland only? A small organ in the middle of the brain that only produces melatonin,
Hey, wait a minute. You guys were talking about souls a while ago. Don't go scientific on me here. And plus, aren't you a fan of John Locke or something?
Ah yes, John Locke. Unlike your easily impressionable selves, I'm a scholar. Locke doesn't believe in souls or the like. He believes in science. And science showed that the brain controls the body, and the brain has memories. Memories that make up you. You or your memories. Past experiences building up values and acting out actions based on those values and experiences. It's like a story. Actually, there's a theory on that too.
Yep. The narrative self contains a lot of theories made by a lot of people. Basically, the self is defined as a story that you tell yourself. You ask, who are you? And basically grab all of your memories and then try to piece them together to make a picture. Like a story. The thing is, doing it this way has some problems. What if the story's cut short? Our lifespans are quite long, but death can come at any moment. Also, what if the person is praiseworthy, but their story is boring? Would that make the person less praiseworthy? So, another way of doing this is making the self as a character. You ask, who are you? And instead of making a full story, you just make a character introduction. As proof, you can cite your past experiences, and instead of a structured narrative, you just tell your story in an episodic way. Also, just food for thought, what if having an ego or a consciousness is a lie? David Hume has a theory called bundle theory. Basically, everything, including us, is just a bunch or a bundle of properties, nothing more. A chair is an object that is brown, has 4 legs, weighs 3 kilograms, and is 3 feet in height. If any one of those changes, then there is no chair. Instead, it's another thing entirely. As for the self, we are nothing more than a bunch of mental states at a particular time. When these states change and are replaced with other mental states, our selves will be replaced in tandem, which could lead to existential dread now that I think about it.
Plus, isn't Kierkegaard like the father of existentialism? Existentialism is this big philosophical theory that emphasized free will and realized the significance of human experience in defining the self. He even wrote about some dude that got drunk in an Amsterdam bar losing his sense of self to sex workers.
Wrong. You're thinking about Albert Camus's novel, The Fall. The drunk you speak of had moved through Kierkegaard's stages of life: the aesthetic, ethical, and religious. The aesthetic stage is driven by our desire for beauty and pleasure. If it feels good, it is good. I like X things, therefore X things is good. Rather than self-growth, the aesthetic man looks for self-gratification, often leading to a disappointing existence.
Oh, I remember this. The ethical stage operates above aesthetics and follows social norms, playing into Aristotle, creating meaningful responses. The self in this stage can be described as the realization that we have obligations towards others, both in particular others and others in general. Our relationship in this stage transform into commitments and expectations, whilst maintaining our own self-assigned roles. Then comes the Kierkegaard's highest stage in life, religious, which did not actually involve specific deities nor belief systems. Rather, moving up the past 2 stages meant that a person was prepared to take the leap of faith. In a sense, it is a form of serving a larger purpose than just ourselves or society.
Sure, but let me get this part straight. Is all this knowledgeable intelligible? Or is there a description of human existence that is more instinctive to man? Something more passionate? Our passions are comparable to a flame, both powerful and destructive, and suppressing this fire would generate inner conflict between what the body wants and what the mind desires. Nietzsche believed that an authentic life meant living in harmony between one's body and mind. Why? Because we live in a world of imperfect information. There is no absolute way of proving truth or deciding what's good or bad, but our curious nature has allowed us to think of possibilities and imitations of the truth that we can freely choose to believe or deny. In the end, we are responsible for how we define ourselves and how to live our authentic lives. In summary, we've just gone through how multiple philosophers defined and viewed the self. First, we have Socrates with hylomorphism and the soul, with a small lecture on humility in philosophical discourse. Then we have old Aristotle differentiating us from animals through having the ability to choose between mindless responses and meaningful actions. We then move to John Jacques and his idea on the authenticity of man, stating that living with not your true side is an inauthentic way of living. Here, we also see the paradox of authenticity. After having our minds boggled by that, we proceeded to double down and talk about dualism according to Rene Descartes, the man who made the ever so popular phrase, "I think, therefore I am." A smooth transition then leads to John Locke, the scholar and believer of a person's memories defining who they are. Then we had Kierkegaard, the father of existentialism, and a drunk guy who went through Kierkegaard's different stages of life. We then posed the question of whether or not all knowledge is supposed to be intelligible. This was answered by Nietzsche's comparison of flame to our passions. Maybe you noticed, or maybe you didn't, but there were actually four underlying themes or patterns that can be found in each speaker's choice of philosophers. The first was the idea of combining the body with the soul. The second mostly disregarded the body, but focused on the soul and the mind. The third described life as a narrative. And finally, the theme of the soul controlling the body was the fourth. To conclude, I think Nietzsche summed up what we think, and it is that there is no absolute way of providing the truth. When push comes to shove, these theories are just guidelines or ideas curious people have made in hopes of helping others. When push comes to shove, it is up to us to choose how we live our own lives. Will it be authentic? Will it be one governed by pleasure or by the mind? Who knows? What you think now could change in a few years, days, or even minutes. How you live life is up to you. And as long as you follow that, I think the life you'll choose to live will at least be one thing. Your choice. Or will it?